Okay, welcome back from the coffee break. We'll have another one in an hour or so before the panel. First, I think there's still one slot for the podcast, Sustain Open Source Design Podcast. Again, the QR code is there. There's one for the morning, so you want to get interviewed and then share all the greatness of your open source contributions, project, etc. There's one pending slot. So, whoever wants it, will take it. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce Veethika from GitLab. And she's going to, just present a case study of how they're using Penpot at GitLab. Thank you so much, Veethika.
Thanks, Pablo. All right. I'm very sorry to scare everyone with this slide to begin with, like reminding people of waterfall. But I want to start this story by touching upon what happened back in the 2000s. After the dot-com bubble burst, the industry realized that there's a need to change the method in which they have been delivering the software because they needed to gain the trust back of the investors. They needed to prove that they can deliver value faster. And that meant that they had to get rid of the methodology that they have been using all along, which is waterfall, which kind of breaks the different phases in product development workflow, and each phase kind of pours into the next one, and so on. And there was a need to move to something that was more iterative and agile. Now, the story didn't stop there. After some time, when the industry started to boom again, and all the different verticals had so many different players coming up, and the competition got fierce with time. Deliverable and the way they delivered was not the only problem anymore. That was a good sound effect. Now they had to care about their creative output if they really wanted to stand out in the market. And to make that happen, it was very important that they kind of brought about a change in how they approached product development altogether, and how they looked at the environment within the culture within their organizations, how they fostered the collaboration happening among the teams, and therefore, they needed to make a shift from this factory-like setup that they had before to something of that of a studio. I'm Veethika, of course, and I'll be talking about how the different tools which are being built in the open, like Penpot and GitLab, are helping bringing about that transformation to the industry through the different channels that they are building into their product to facilitate the kind of communication that was not possible before. OK, a little about myself before I dive into the story. The first chapter is pretty simple. I was born. I was asked to be a doctor. I lost interest. My parents were disappointed. Chapter 2, I did not know what to do with my life next. It was easy to reject an option, but it was not easy to understand what is it that I was meant to be. So I experimented a lot, and many experiments and many degrees later, I found myself working for a tech giant. The experience was such that I literally ended up Googling after a few months, what's the opposite of secrecy? Open source popped up. I don't know how. My question wasn't it wasn't too good. But I thank my stars that it popped up. And it has been 6 years. I'm very intentional about only associating myself with institutions, organizations, initiatives that are only open in nature. And today, I'm this person who's out of office until the 7th of July and is a senior product designer with the pipeline security team at GitLab. So the analogy of factory versus studio, it's not something that, of course, I've come up with of myself. It has been borrowed. It has been borrowed from an experiment that a Stanford professor once ran in the university. And what he did was he created 2 groups of 4 people each. And to each of those groups, he assigned the exact same task. To the group that he considered, to the group that he named factory, what he ended up doing was he gave each one of them their separate desks, a pen and a paper, and made one of the team members a boss and whispered the word productivity, efficiency, and industrial revolution to them. Then he came to the second group, and he made sure that he placed them like far away from the factory group. And this time he did things differently. He mentioned to them joy, create, fun, and the items that he gave them to work with was creative, like colorful markers, papers, pipe cleaners, which was very fascinating, and a few other like fancy little things. And they were just like told to have fun and create. Now, the output of this whole experiment was supposed to be like those groups coming to the crowd, like coming back to the crowd, and telling a story about how they like deliver the task. And inevitably, without a doubt, the factory team had a very boring story to tell compared to the studio team. The output of the factory team was consistent, yes, productive, yes, but the creative output was like, it was blah. And on the contrary, the studio had come up like with really innovative concepts, but their delivery was not so, like, not at par. So the lesson here was, like each of these setups, they have some trade-off, and we don't have to be like sticking to any one of them. In fact, it's all about finding the just right balance that works out for your organization. And the start conditions really matter. And by start conditions, I don't mean like the conditions that you set up before you even realize your organization, because of course, like to reset the start conditions, you won't restart your organization. You can do it anytime, but it really matters like what is the environment that you're providing to your to the people who are working in the team, and how is it that you are inspiring them, motivating them, and sharing the task with them. Now, in 2021, I think around March, Washington Post conducted this survey, and I won't lie, this was like heavily influenced by the pandemic conditions. But the concerns that they covered through this survey, I would say they are valid nonetheless, because even though like we are way past that phase, to maintain a single source of truth in communication, especially when it comes to the conversations that are related to making decisions, organizations, they still make sure that they are like documenting everything on the tools that they're using. So it's not happening all in the meeting rooms, and they just want to make sure that whatever goes in behind making those decisions, it's like well documented, it's available for everyone to look at. So the importance of collaborative technology, it hasn't gone away with the pandemic, touch wood, going away. And one of the insights that they came up with was 74% of the participants in the survey, they said collaborative work management tools are very important to the success of innovation and team agility. Now, with this, what I want to show is a few examples of how GitLab and Penpot are doing some very right things in this area. And yeah, let's look at those examples. There might be some bias I would have when it comes to like picking up the examples. Take it with a pinch of salt. But let's get started. So on the top, you would see there's a screenshot from something called the design management feature in GitLab. Before that was available to us, it was really difficult. It was very tricky to have a very focused, productive, and like discussion around the design proposals that we were working with, because I mean, no matter which tool you're using, you would easily relate to those common threads running so long that it becomes like, eventually it becomes really hard to manage. So this has been really helpful in collaborating with the overall team, like looping in everybody, starting from the technical writer, the product manager, the developers on the team, and having a decent discussion, and like documenting all of those discussions. There's version history available for like every time you update the screenshot. And you don't have to like put something new all the time. You can just keep on updating that. And you can also just go on resolving the threads. That means you don't have to go and update the description every single time you make slightest of change in the decisions. So yeah, it's working out great. And the next one is kind of my favorite because going back to my background, I did many things. Coding was not one of them. And I'm not very proud of it, but that's like, I'm not too good at it. I do dabble into some front-end MRs once in a while, but I sympathize with the folks who have to review it. Yeah, and there's this option in the merge request page where you just, like, there's a button called View App. You click on it, it spins up an environment, and you can just go and test the changes that the feature branch is introducing to the product. And I would, in fact, quickly show a GIF demonstrating that. Like, this made my life really simple, and it's the same with the rest of the designers. So it can be really daunting to like go to the code and figure out what's happening. But like now what you can do is you can just go to the review app. You can log into the instance that opens up, and you can just go and test the feature. And now coming to the examples from Penpot, having your, like speaking on day 2 has its advantages. I was able to pull up so many amazing screenshots from the talks from yesterday. And inspect is definitely like one of those features that I would want to touch upon. Like, it really kind of brings together designers and developers on the team, helps them communicate in a single language. And like comments and threads, yes, they are available on other products too, but what makes it really different for Penpot is that it's accessible to everybody, and that makes like all the difference. And with that, I really want to touch upon like how to bring about this transformation. Like, how can the teams that are working on developing these tools can facilitate this change in culture on the teams that are actually using the tool. So let's start with Dogfooding. Penpot hosts its design system on Penpot. GitLab develops GitLab on GitLab. And this has been really helpful for both these organizations to kind of get into the shoes, align with the mental model of the personas that be using their product, and like not just do a technical dogfooding of the product, but also a cultural dogfooding. So they make sure that the kind of communication-related changes that they want to bring about in the teams that are using these tools, their own teams, their own organizations are conducive to such changes. The next one is share widely and share often. And even if a product or an organization is saying they're open, the openness means nothing if things are not discoverable to the world outside. So it takes like an extra effort to make sure that what you are working on is visible to the world outside. And again, like the YouTube channels. And not just that, what Penpot has been doing in this Penpot Fest, like highlighting all the work, all the progress that they have been making, and continuously like sharing them over Twitter, over other places. It's a great step because it allows the world outside to get a peek into what's happening inside. And that gives them an opportunity, that tells them that this is happening, and this is a good time when you can just go and, share feedback around that. Coming to the third one, which is empower to contribute. Now, once in a while, I run workshops to train designers how to contribute to open source. And I try to be like really non-biased, but I'll be very frank. Their first choice is Penpot as a project to make the contributions. And that's because how welcoming the contribution guidelines are. And it's really important because we have to make sure that the people that we are building for, each one of those personas, they have an opportunity to contribute to the product. It's really easy to set up code, like development-related contribution guidelines, but it's not so easy to create a room for everybody to be able to contribute to your product. And looking at how GitLab has been doing it, it's also very impressive because we have opportunities for translation, UX design, evangelism, project templates alongside development. And that takes some extra effort, and it is the extra length that these organizations have been going. Lastly, even though it might sound preachy, I want to say listening to everyone is really important. And I mean, with experience, with time, we, as designers, we often get this confidence that we have trained ourselves to be non-biased, but humans are inherently biased. And this struggle, not struggle, but the effort to fight against your own biases, it should just never stop. And we recently made a big change to how we go about doing our foundational researches, so I just want to quote that example. So in GitLab, we work with jobs to be done because we just want to make sure that we are leaving enough room for innovation in our researches and also in how we are doing customer inquiry. And for that, we require to do a foundational research to document those jobs to be done. We did it very differently this time. Usually what we do is we go take interviews, we come back, we document it, and then we lay it out on a mural board. But this time we thought, let's do it collaboratively. Let's do it with the users. So instead of just recording the interview, we shared a presentation with them and gave them the edit access and used subtle indicators for the phases in the larger workflow where they feel that they are the primary executor or the secondary executor. And we were also taking notes collaboratively. If I'm typing something and I'm casting my layer of bias over that, they had all the right to go and edit that. And that worked out really well. The quality of the documented jobs to be done, the jobs, they were very high. And at the same time, we just made sure that we are not, building things from the ideas that we have kind of inculcated in our head over time. And with that, one more example that I would want to include, but I don't have it on my slide, is something that Pablo mentioned in his presentation, the designer to developer ratio. That's also that kind of brings about a big change in how a team delivers and how much a team cares about creating value for the users. And that being the end of my presentation. Thank you. Questions? Any questions? Okay.